So we're going to just talk to you about how to improve your spend analytics and control strategies in your organisation. Just a quick introduction. Myself and Russ have worked together for over 10 years. Russ has implemented both iValuer and Proactis solutions for over 12 years, and he's also implemented many BI solutions as well for our customers. He's also, like Simon, an Ipswich Town fan. I'm a project manager on the iValuer side for TSM. I've worked on most of the iValuer projects to date. I've also previously worked on many BI projects, pulling together data from lots of different data sources, so ERP systems, procurement, CRM, etc. Building cubes, data warehouses and things like that for the analysts to report over. And previously I've worked as an accountant and an ERP consultant, and I'm a Sheffield Wednesday fan.
It's unfortunate.
Okay, so just going to take you through roughly what we're going to talk about. So we've got a quick intro, what is analytics. We're going to then just have a little bit of a questionnaire about where you all are in your organisation on the sort of scale of analytics maturity. Russ is going to talk about why it matters that we do spend analysis, so what benefits we can get out of it. Then we're going to talk a little bit about how can we improve analytics in your organisation, so some simple takeaways there. We're going to talk about some of the KPIs that we can use to measure when we're doing our analysis. We're going to talk about some of the methods that are available for you all to use when it comes to reporting. We're going to look at a few case studies where there's actually been, where analytics has been implemented and then there's a sort of a tangible improvement. We're also going to talk about how TSM can help you with your spend analytics. So we'll talk about some of the services that we can provide. And then we're just going to, at the bottom, we're just going to have a few key takeaways and a few bullet points about why analytics projects sometimes fail. Okay, so in a nutshell, spend analytics is cleaning, cleansing, consolidating, categorizing the data within your organization, and the control strategy is then using that information to actually manage, guide spending, save money, minimize waste, and increase efficiency.
Okay, so I'm going to stand here so I can actually see the screen at the same time. So I've been with TSM Touchstone for 12 years, which I think makes me still sort of one of the newbies. Anyway, I'm going to discuss why it matters, better understanding it with supplier and business spend. Okay, so firstly, we need to establish who are our strategic suppliers. These are the really important suppliers we can gain leverage with, the suppliers we can learn more about, build better relationships with. But we also want to understand about the high volume of transactions. So these are the transactions that are using a lot of resource. They may not be particularly high spend, but similarly, they are essentially very important, and at the same time, there could be a big administrative burden associated with them. So low value, it doesn't always come into focus, but sometimes it can cause problems. It can cause bottlenecks in the supply chain. Then, furthermore, we're looking to identify maverick spend, cosy relationships, and how compliant are they to internal processes? Chances are not very. We want to understand, looking at the systems as well, how efficient is our purchase to pay cycle and what is the administrative burden? So much sort of value is lost in an inefficient purchase to pay cycle. And then we look at the opportunities. So, stronger and more collaborative relationships. Armed with our data, we can now identify who our strategic suppliers are, and this gives us we've got better information. We're armed with data to make more informed decisions. This gives us opportunities for leverage and to negotiate, and ultimately with a view to having fewer suppliers. Fewer suppliers are easier to manage. Easier to manage, we can look at risk. It's easier to manage risk with fewer suppliers. And then again, looking internally, process efficiencies. Are there opportunities for things like punch out, where we've got high volume of transactions with suppliers, or alternatively, automatic invoicing. Again, high volume of invoices. Can we do anything with that, with those suppliers? Again, looking internally, collaboration with your internal stakeholders. Do we all really know who our internal stakeholders are? Not always, but by understanding better what we're spending the money on, how we're spending it, who we're spending it with, we can identify that. And with understanding better our internal stakeholders, it gives a greater opportunity to identify and address things like non-compliance. And then it's all about trying to sort of enforce those policies through system processes. Can we get the system to do what we want it to do? Enforce policy, give people the necessary information, empower people to make the right choices whilst keeping to the company guidelines. And ultimately, the final opportunity really is to optimise our workflows and improve our P2P cycles.
Okay, so we're going to do another little multi-choice poll thing on the phone. So we'll give you it's the same QR code, but I'll just go through. I'll just basically want to know within your organisation which one of these categories you, on the scale of the analytics maturity, you fit into. But I'm going to go through them first. So down here, left-hand corner, we're basically we're starting off with the data dabbler. So this is where you're doing ad hoc analysis within your organisation. You know, maybe you're downloading it into a spreadsheet, cleansing it, recategorizing it in the spreadsheet, and just doing, producing ad hoc reports. So no real automation going on there. And every time someone asks for a report, you've got to, you're recreating everything again. And then if we're moving up the maturity scale, we sort of move to a spend explorer. So we're starting to consolidate some of the data. So you could say that that's within a procurement software. We're starting to then categorize our spend and our suppliers. And we're starting to use more standardized tools to report on that data. So that could be, some reporting within the actual procurement software. Moving up further, we're now sort of becoming a little bit more forward-looking, and we're moved to the sort of insight innovator. So, looking at spending patterns, identifying opportunities where we can save money, and in this sort of phase, the data is becoming much more well consolidated, and we've got processes in place where a lot more of this is automated. Moving further up, we've got our strategic navigator. So we're now pulling in different data sources, CRM, HR, other systems, and we've got a much more well-defined process in place, and we can start to think about using, maybe we're pulling this into a data warehouse, we can think about using modelling and forecasting. And then if right up on the right-hand side, we're talking about master of spend. So this is where you've got fully automated analysis, analytics. We've got this continuous loop of improvement, and we're able to make use of some of the AI tools, machine learning tools. So just going to do a quick poll just to sort of see where everyone is. Now, this is kind of aspirational, by the way, so I'd be, look forward to see the results anyway. But if you want to you can choose more than one. So if we just flip over, oops, we've already got some on there. So if you want to just sort of put where you are on that. Okay, we have got a master of spend, which is interesting. Can you put your hand up, please?
You've still got 50-50, waiting for a friend.
Excellent. So, okay, it's still moving. Right, okay, so I think as we sort of thought, we're all at the moment we're in this sort of ad hoc reporting, getting things, semi-automated, starting to categorise spend. So that's fine, and we're going to talk a little bit later how we can, we can move up that scale of maturity. Okay, so how can we improve analytics in your organisation? I think the important thing here is this is a continuous loop and continuous improvement that needs to go on. So first of all, we've got to identify someone in the organisation who's actually going to be responsible for the analytics. That could be someone outside as well. We're going to identify our data sources. We've got to think about data quality, making sure that it's consistent, making sure there's nothing missing. We've got to categorise our data so it's used in a uniform categorisation so that we can actually report on it easily. We've got to think about our target audience. So, if we're reporting to, high level, then obviously some of these KPIs need to be quite simplistic and not too overly complicated. And then we need to think about what KPIs we're going to use to measure our success and to measure how well we're doing against our objectives. And then again, this sort of continuous enrichment. So Russ will just go into a bit more detail.
Yeah. So in terms of identifying the resources, identifying the appropriate internal and external resource, but you're looking at someone with the appropriate skill set and background. But also, beyond that, they need time to actually be able to fulfil and deliver the project as well. So there's no point just starting it and then not being able to complete that. We're also looking at where is the data. So we're looking at one data source, or we're trying to pull in from multiple data sources. What we're sort of recommending is you focus on small areas to start with. Don't try and do it all. Don't try and gather too much data. And in order to do that, maybe focus on a friendly department. Someone someone who's not actually going to mind you snooping around sort of within their files and data and accounts and things. So keep it small, keep it realistic, and then work out from there.
So yeah, the data needs to be of good quality. I think this was mentioned by Callum as well earlier. Got to make sure the data is complete, make sure there's no missing fields, make sure it's consistent. Maybe within the system the procurement system, we need to make fields mandatory. Maybe we need to add additional fields so we can capture that additional analysis. We've got to ensure that there's validation in place in the system. So if it's a date field, you're only allowed to put dates in there, etc. Another important thing here is just actually making sure all the data is actually captured in the procurement system, because there are credit cards, there's other spending, and that spending might not be getting analysed. And so obviously if we're doing our analytics and we want to look at that spend, then we need to be capturing it and categorising it with the rest of the spend. Again, alluded to earlier on by Callum, junk in, junk out. Just making a reference here to AI, it can definitely help as a tool, but it's not a sticking plaster to sort out the quality of your data. Yeah. Categorisation. So we need to obviously make sure we've got a solid taxonomy, commodity structure in place across all our spend, and that we're categorising that spend accordingly. Maybe using intuitive items so that when people are requesting that they're choosing an item which they understand, and they don't that the coding just gets automatically done behind the scenes. Again, GL coding, it's probably worth doing some analysis to work out how much recoding is being done by finance in the finance system. And we want to prevent that. We want to get it right in the source rather than loads of journals put in afterwards, because if that's the case, then our procurement analysis is not really going to be that accurate. Categorising suppliers, making sure we understand our preferred suppliers, etc. And again, a simple one here, obviously, defining budgets. If you want to track savings and overruns, then obviously we need budgets in the system.
So we also need to sort of understand who our target audience is and how we're going to deliver that data. So are we looking for sort of headline data in the form of dashboards where you can then have the detail sort of a click away, or perhaps possibly having all the data, allowing the user then to slice and dice that data and effectively make their own headlines from it. Also consider what visual tools you're going to be using or have access to. If the visual tools are too complicated to use, you tend to find users will just ignore it or perhaps go off and do their own thing. And then how frequent are the metrics as well that we're trying to deliver? Obviously, this is monthly, weekly, daily. Don't always assume that live is necessarily going to give you the best data. Live can be a drain on your resources of the server, but also you've got ongoing processes throughout the day. If you're running live information, live reports, it can skew that data with unfinished processes. And then in terms of measuring success, prioritise one or two key metrics to begin with. And as I said earlier, just try and keep it simple to start with. And then report spend and analytics and cost avoidance initiatives. Broadcast any good news that you may have.
Okay, so an example of some KPIs. This is just some samples. It's not the entire list, but you know, spend under very simple ones. You're probably aware of most of these already. Spend under management. You know, how much of the spend is actually going through the procurement system compared to the total organisational spend. Contract compliance. How many? What's the percentage of spend that's actually coming from negotiated contracts? Obviously, if we've got favourable terms on contracts and things like that, we should be that should be a number that we're trying to increase. Number of simple one like number of suppliers. So obviously, the more suppliers we've got in the system, the more of an administrative burden it is. Reducing the number of suppliers might be a good indicator that we've negotiated better contracts with fewer suppliers, better terms. Number of suppliers across multiple categories. So looking at how many travel and entertaining suppliers do we actually have in the system. We might have 20 suppliers there, and it might be just a small amount of spend. So we could maybe target that and try and bring that number down and try and make some cost savings there. Top 10 suppliers by spend, a pretty obvious one, but relevant. Obviously, we need to understand who our top, who we spend our most money with, because there's probably negotiations that could take place with those suppliers. And then again, spend by category. So which categories in the organisation are we spending the most money on? Again, a useful tool to then start looking at how we can target the big ones first, or to save costs.
So further metrics to measure success, compliance to preferred suppliers. So we're looking at spend that's with our preferred suppliers as opposed to spend outside of that. Linked into that, of course, is identifying maverick spends as unplanned, unauthorised spend or spend with non-compliant suppliers. It also just gives us an opportunity just to sort of gain visibility on our tail spend as well. This low-value orders. Your low-value orders, but there's often multiple suppliers involved. Then sort of looking internally again at the procurement cycle times. Another good metric is the average time taken to complete a purchase transaction from requisition to payment. So that's looking at all the individual stages of that process, not just looking at the start and the end date. Number of invoices processed per month, or even the number of invoices processed over the course of that month during different periods of that month. Are we putting unnecessary pressure on ourselves by processing all our invoices in the last week? Things like that. So these sort of analytics can identify trends like that. Percentage of invoices processed without intervention. So what we mean here is an invoice is put into the system, it ultimately passes all the way through the system into your financial system, is paid without any user intervention. That's kind of where we want to get at, and that's a really good indication of processes working well. And then we look at the suppliers themselves, tracking supplier performance in terms of delivery time, quality of goods, services, etc. So when you're in that position where you're really tracking supplier performance and supplier monitoring, another great metric to have. Lead time, are they delivering in a timely manner, just in time, etc. If lead times are important in the type of industry you work within. And then invoice compliance as well. Are they quoting the purchase order number? Are they appropriate terms? They apply in our terms, their terms, but are they doing it within contracts, etc. So this is just a sample of the KPIs that you could use to measure performance.
Yeah, and just to reinforce the fact that we need to look at all these things on a continuous cycle, and like we mentioned before, start small. Don't need to do everything at once, and there's this continuous loop of improvement. Just flick over. Some of the improvements that you could start to make then are you could introduce alerts and workflow, introduce alerts into the system, so to prevent people making spend which is non-contract spend, or you could prevent people spending money when you've gone over budget. You could prevent people using requesters using unapproved suppliers. You could try and with alerts, try and workflow, try and push them down the fact of using preferred suppliers. And the important thing is that we're constantly reviewing our analysis, making sure that all our KPIs are still relevant. And another thing here is training as well. So if we've developed on two forms. One, the analysts themselves, there needs to be a continuous training going on with the analysts themselves so they can improve their analytics skills, modelling, forecasting, etc. But also just making sure that within the organisation you're constantly training people and showing them where they can get to this information and how they can use it. Yeah, no, that's fine.
So let's look at various methods available to improve your spend analysis. So first and basic method, as we all probably use thousands of times, is manual analysis using spreadsheets. It's absolutely fine for sort of low volume and basic reporting. We've all probably all got access to it. We all know pretty much how to use it, at least in the most basic sense. So the pros of it, obviously widely available, inexpensive. However, it's not really scalable, is it? So, and it's also time consuming because you often just start the process from the beginning every time. You also inevitably end up having to do a bit of a manual data cleanse before you can actually really do anything with that data. So the next step up really is your reporting tools, analytics and dashboards within the procurement software itself. So again, these are good for headline information, for snapshot data. As I mentioned about dashboards earlier, we can get the headline information with the devil in the detail behind it. The pros of them, because they're part of your procurement system, they're very much tailored towards full cycle procurement reporting. You've got an opportunity for automation within there. You've got scheduling, things like that. And often they come with sort of built-in security, and you've got obviously the accessibility through the system, but the built-in security as well, so that you can control which users have access to which reports or which data within those reports. The cons of that, though, the functionality might not be as rich as your specific BI solutions. They still will require a degree of expertise to develop and design these reports. Within the database as well, the actual structures of the tables may not be set up specifically with the reporting in mind. They're more functional tables. So again, you need that kind of skill set to understand those tables, to get, in some cases anyway, to be able to extract the reports you want. And then there is often the limitation of the data source. Obviously, it's built within a system, it's got that data source, but can you then extend it on to other data sources if you want to pull information in from further afield?
Okay, and then sort of moving further on, you can start using specific BI tools like, or visualization tools like Tableau, Power BI, Qlik, where you can create your own custom dashboards. So this is good where maybe you've already got an investment in Power BI, so you might be using it somewhere or Tableau in the organisation, so you can use that expertise. You know, the fact is, these tools do offer more powerful visualization. You may also have someone in-house who can help develop this. And looking at some of these tools now, they've also got quite a bit of AI development that's gone into them. For example, I was looking at Power BI the other day, and just by loading up the data source into it, it actually started suggesting dashboards that you actually want to that you might want to use. So I'm not going to lie, Proactis and iValue are not going to do that for you out of the box at the moment. But obviously there's tools out there that are doing that. Disadvantage, obviously, you need a skilled analyst. As I said before, the data's got to be good going into there, nice and clean, good quality. Yeah, they're not necessarily procurement tools. So you've got to maybe build the specific KPIs for procurement into that, which requires development, and you need to understand the data structures. And you've got to think about security as well, which obviously if you're doing it within the application, that would already be done for you. And then sort of moving further on, or to complement the BI tools, we can start looking at data warehouses. So here we can start pulling in multiple data sources. We can make this very automated. It's good for handling large volumes of data. Doesn't matter what visualization tool we then put on top of it. So you could have some departments using Tableau, some departments using Excel, some departments using Power BI, and you can also build in a centralized security model into that, so that if you know that's where all your data is, then at least you can keep that safe. You know where it all is. Obviously, disadvantages. These are requires more investment. Requires more expertise, requires continuous development. Potentially there's security risks because all your data's in one place, so access control could be complex, and there is a danger of creating a data swamp with all this data that you're bringing into it.
So just a couple of case studies from our clients. So first one, we had one client, they knew they had a problem with invoice payment delays. They didn't know the scale of it, they couldn't actually get to the root cause of it, but there were little subtle signs that there were problems when bailiffs started turning up at their offices and things like that. I won't mention them, and they're not here, I should add. So what we did for them, we went in there, we created a suite of reports. So actually predominantly dashboard reports, but we were looking at invoice processing times, start to end, but also looking at all the different stages within that process to try and identify where the problems were. And in doing so, for them, we were able to identify the sort of bottlenecks and the pain points in the process for them. So it was something they could then target and address and prioritise themselves. And ultimately, the result of that was improvement in process and less bailiff letters, basically.
Yeah, just another example, just a simple one. In the NHS, when they started analysing their spend, they found that huge price variances for the same products. So they were buying the same products from different suppliers. So obviously a simple improvement there. They started negotiating national contracts for common items with fewer suppliers, and they saved tons of money.
So we had another situation where a client had deployed, for a client that deployed an invoice automation solution. They felt it was working, it felt good, but they needed to demonstrate back to management in some sort of real terms the benefits and effectiveness of the deployment of this solution. So again, just by creating a number of KPI reports, working with that client, we were able to develop sort of rolling month-on-month reports that could show, in very easy and demonstrable terms, an improvement of processes since they'd taken on this system. So ultimately, they were able to go back to management and show them the necessary upward or downward curves. Simple terms, yes, it's working. We've got 3 minutes, 2 minutes.
Yep. So quickly, how can sort of TSM help with this? Well, within the applications, we can help you develop reports. We can help you enhance the dashboards and the analytics within the solutions. We have a dashboard pack that's available for Proactis. We've got a TSM iValuer reporting pack, which is available for iValuers. So this is where you can subscribe to a suite of reports which cover all the modules. We add in all your custom fields. We update these reports frequently. You get the opportunity to ask for enhancements, and it's fully supported. We also have now a connector for iValuer to a REST API connector.
IPAs later.
Yeah. I'm thinking about the bar. Yeah. So yeah, we've got which allows you to connect directly to the iValuer database. So you could use Power BI, Tableau, whatever, to connect to that and do your reporting, or you could connect it to a data warehouse. On the Proactis side, we've got queries that have been written, which can be used to report, again, using Power BI, Tableau, Qlik. Active monitoring was mentioned earlier on. So this is a tool which sits a service that we offer, so we can send out alerts if certain things happen. So if there's a breach of payment terms, overspend, high value orders, etc. That's completely customizable, and we can send out those alerts. We can export the data for data warehouses to ingest. You can either use our API connectors, or we can put data onto a SFTP site for you to pick up. Coming in, at the moment, we've now got a conversational analytics agent, an AI agent. It's in early stages at the moment. It's just been released, but hopefully that over time that will improve and be enhanced. And we can also build data warehouses for you and host those if required.
I'm getting evil looks in the back of the room at the moment.
Yeah. We're good.
Why does it fail? Rubbish data. Often you get this data, you look at it, and it's just not fit for purpose. Duplicate supply records, things in the wrong field. Unrealistic expectations. I said before, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. So if you start too big, it becomes a problem. So start small and scale up. It's not just a one-time effort. So run it, repeat it, learn from your lessons. Feed that information back into your next attempt. Eat, sleep, analyse, repeat, basically.
And yeah, make sure you've got the right technical expertise, so a blend between the analytics and the procurement, and lack of buy-in. So it requires, you need to make sure that people are aware of these analytics tools, that they're constantly trained on where they are, where to find them. Otherwise, they will adopt their own. And there we go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.